look at horror and sci-fi TV from two cousins who vaguely know what they're doing. I'm MK.
I'm Monica.
And this week we are talking about episode 3, season 1 of Hemlock Grove, called The Order of the Dragon. This episode, once again, came out on April 19th, 2015, and it was directed by Darren Serafian, written by Brian McGreevy and Lee Shipman. So same director and writers as last week, so I don't have anything new to say about them, which is nice because I have a lot of notes.
Yeah, this episode was, I will say, I kind of a turning point in opinion-wise a little bit for this season, but
I definitely am still on board with the show, but this was the first time that I saw things that I thought were very poor ways to tell a story.
Yeah.
Our little Netflix blurb says, Christina discovers a new victim and Sheriff Sworn gets outside help from Dr. Chaucier. Now a suspect, Peter joins Roman to find the killer. First of all, the episode blurb includes characters that are not even in the show yet.
No.
So that's strike number one. Because you can't name characters in the clues for the episode if the audience doesn't know who that character is. Like,
yeah, because we haven't met Sheriff yet until this episode.
If it was like Sheriff Sworn gets outside help, full stop, I would have been fine. But then I already go into the episode being like, who's Dr. Chaucier and why do I need to know about them?
Yeah.
So, all right.
Cool.
Our pre-credits scene is actually 2 scenes that it's flipping back and forth between. And one is, I think I'll go with probably the less important of the two. Not that either of them is unimportant, but the less important of the two would be the scenes with Norman in his office with the crazy dude from the woods who we find out is named Mr. Pullman. Mr. Pullman claims that he has been dead, but is not dead anymore, and wants to know where the soul goes in them. Only we have no idea who they are or what on earth he is talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's, at one point Norman asks him why he was, like, going on and on about the Ouroboros, and Mr. Pullman freaks out and is like, where did you hear that word? And it's like, bro, you've been saying it nonstop for however long that you have been in this town.
Yeah. Literally, within our first meeting him in the last episode, he just is going off about the Ouroboros and that little attack he's having. And, like, the fact that he, like, realistically for Norman just
well, I mean, he is a doctor.
Yeah, this is weird calling him Dr. Norman. Norman, for him to have probably been treating him, if we're looking at him, this is probably his, he had to have known what he was talking about, had to have written reports of things that he's probably said to evaluate him. And for it to just be shocking that he were to have known or act like him saying Ouroboros is such a big thing, I feel like it's just a little too much hype for a scene that we have at least all have seen where he just says that word I don't even know how many times, and for him to be put away, even if this is their very first meeting together, the fact of Ouroboros would have been brought up before that one moment.
Well, especially if it's a thing that he's like chanting over and over again. Like usually when a crazy person has one mantra that they're saying over and over and over again, their doctor knows what that mantra is.
Yeah. So I don't know if there is any meaning behind him saying Ouroboros, or if
there
just
100% is. Like, not that we know what the meaning is, but like the symbolism of the Ouroboros has been in it in every episode. It's in the credit scene. And now there's a crazy guy who's ranting about all the weird supernatural stuff to people he shouldn't be ranting about weird supernatural stuff. And he's talking about the Ouroboros. So obviously, he's not as crazy as he seems, except for that he's actually like crazy.
Yeah, like legit, like had like a psychotic break.
Yeah. So like but that whole conversation and all those pieces are done in bits and pieces between other scenes where Christina is traipsing through the woods, as one does, apparently. And then she sees this like snake hole by a tree and has a weird ass flashback to like a gigantic like cement mixer.
Really don't know what that's all about.
Yeah, no idea. Then she sees a dead body. And, you know, her first thought is, ha ha ha, someone's playing a joke on me.
Which the fact that the town that she lives in, knowing what the hell's going on, for her to
Like,
think that that's right.
A chick just died like a month ago. And you don't really have that many friends. So who did you think was playing a joke on you with a dead body?
Yeah. That seems like a bit of a stretch.
Yeah. So then she continues to be weird and like it's like, oh, saying all this stuff about how beautiful this dead body is, how pale its skin is, as if it's like some kind of acting exercise, like a psycho. And then and this is what kills me. She goes and kisses the dead body as if it's a scene and realizes that it is real lips and loses her shit. Which well, you know what, that is fine. Like, that is creepy. But it is not until after she kisses the dead body that she sees the massive amounts of maggots all over the body that she is currently sitting on.
Yeah. And also, it's a dead body. It smells like fucking death. Like, how would you walk near the body, and especially with her being ripped in half, and not smell it?
Right. We find out later that the lower half, like, you never see the lower half of the body because it looks like it's buried under leaves. But we find out later in the episode that you never see the lower half of the body because it's not there. It is literally half of a body covered in maggots. I'm sorry, but I would notice those maggots.
Yeah, I don't care how much you're into it. No. But there's something, I don't know if that was just Christina's like weird thing, and I don't know if this is going to mean something like she ended up knowing it was a body because of certain things, and she was just like playing along in case anyone was watching or anything like that, or because there are so many telltale signs of that being a dead body for her just to walk up and go,
the maggots, the discoloration, like somebody in your town must be Netflix level SFX makeup artists for you to believe that was not a dead body.
Yeah.
Because I believed, watching it on TV, knowing that an SFX team did it, that it was a dead body.
Yeah.
Then we go to the credits. Yep. Yeah. This episode has already thrown me for a loop.
Yeah. For sure. 100%. Especially with, because when I think back on that one scene, it's like, I wonder if it was just, bad storytelling, or if it means more. I'm trying to hope with optimism that it's supposed to mean more. And that's why
I hope that Christina's character is going to continue to be a fucking weirdo and like crazy. Otherwise, that was just the worst body discovery scene I've ever watched.
Yeah.
I literally wrote, "Oh, cool, Christina, let's play with the dead body."
But hey, sometimes you.
Yeah, sometimes you just want to make out with a dead chick.
Yeah, that's not necrophilia, is it?
Speaking of dead chicks, 2 episodes out of 3 where before the credits we see nipples.
Yes, that is also true. That is also true. Yeah, this wasn't a clothed naked chick. This wasn't a clothed dead chick. This was naked.
Yeah, naked. Not even a naked chick. Naked half of a female body.
Yeah.
Everything below her belly button was non-existent.
Yeah, pretty much.
Cool. So then the credits happen, and we go to Peter re-arriving home after his night of wolfdom. And Roman slept over on the couch.
What a gem.
You thought he was, I wrote, what a weirdo.
No, I think that's sweet. He waited for Peter to come back to make sure he was okay. And that's what I think shows how much Roman wants this friendship for a logistical reason, not because he's selfish, not because he wants things figured out for himself, but because he stayed there with Lydia, or Linda, not Lydia. Linda. He stayed there with Linda, knowing that, like, okay, Peter's not coming back until probably the morning, so he's like, I might as well camp out because I want to make sure he's, like, doing cool.
I wonder what on earth the conversations that happened between Roman and Linda between the transformation and him passing out on the couch.
I feel like there wasn't much conversation, just her offering him food or something to drink here and there.
Probably more milk, because apparently we drink milk in this show.
Yeah, a lot of it.
So Peter comes in and Roman asked him how it was, and he said there's something out there, like he smelled something bad. And then Roman tries to talk to him some more, and Peter falls asleep, which is fair because he was up all night being a wolf.
Yep.
And his mom, like Linda says, like it takes a lot out of him, and then she reminds Roman like that he better not say anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then Peter has a dream. Peter's dream both freaked me out and made me laugh a lot. So Peter is dreaming that he's on top of this like quarry or something, and he's talking to Roman. Roman is talking about birds being able to see magnetic fields, and that's how they know how to migrate. But this river in Pennsylvania is the only river that flows to the north, and it screws all the birds up because they're so stupid. And then he yells, "Stupid birds," and then they all die. I was laughing at that.
Yeah, he's just like, stupid birds, and they just all fucking fall.
He gets so angry at these birds for no reason. And then he's talking about the magnetic fields, and he's like, do you think that's why they know, like, how they know, like, that's how we all end up here or whatever, like, something about them being in that town? And then Peter asks if that's blood, and he's like, oh yeah, just a little bit. And he's got a bloody Ouroboros, like on his chest, like bleeding out, but it's around a circle in his shirt, and inside the bloody Ouroboros is the Illuminati symbol. And then some kind of weird transformation happens where something happens to Roman and Peter starts screaming, and then it flashes to just wolf eyes and Peter running through the woods again, and that is the whole dream.
Yeah.
And to be honest, for me, that might have been the last interesting scene in the whole episode.
Oh, yeah.
like, there were other things that were important to the plot. There were other moments that I liked. But that was the last moment that I felt truly interested.
Yeah.
And now I still have 2 whole pages of notes to deal with the rest of this nonsense.
Yeah. Also back one scene where before Peter had his dream and Roman was leaving and Linda was like, "You want some coffee or anything like that?" He's like, "No."
He says he has to go to. He says no because he has to go to school.
Yeah. I'm like, what would he have done if Peter didn't come back before school started?
Right. My first thought was, why would they do this on a school night? And then I remembered, oh wait, you don't really have control over the full moon. You can't pick if it's on a school night or not. I was so mad that it was a school night.
It's like, that's the mom in you coming out. Like, kids transforming into wolves on school nights. Wow, what a sin.
Well, the English teacher in me was so worried that Peter was going to miss the next chapter of Wuthering Heights.
We know damn well he hasn't even picked up the book once.
Oh. So next scene is Norman goes and has a weird secret meeting with Tom, Sheriff Tom, in Tom's car, where we find out that someone is bothering Tom for information about Mr. Pullman. So basically, Mr. Pullman was transferred to Norman's psych hospital on purpose, which means that these weird rantings are now, we know for a fact, even more valuable to whatever the F is happening in this town.
Mm-hmm.
Norman gets out of the car after their little chat, and Tom gets the call that they find another body. Then we flash immediately to a random chick waking up in bed with another chick.
Yep.
I was like, who are you? What? And then the unimportant chick is like, oh, are you leaving? And the important chick is like, yeah, I'm going to mass. And she's like, and the unimportant chick is like, why do I always do this to myself? And I'm like, that's a lot of angst in a relationship that doesn't matter, but okay.
Yeah.
So then the important chick, who we find out is Dr. Clementine Chassor, goes to mass to meet up with this priest who is like a father to her. And to be honest, I find the relationship between the priest and her interesting, and I hope we go back to that. I hope that wasn't just like a one-off scene, because if it was, I'm going to be really mad, because I was already mad that they were introducing such big characters in episode 3, which if you have a 25 episode season and you take the first 4 episodes to introduce characters, that's fine. But if you only have a 13 episode season and you're still doing like big broad character introductions in episode 3, I start to get overwhelmed by people being introduced. So if they go back to Clementine and the priest, I will be interested because I found him to be funny. But knowing this show, they won't. So then it was also just a weird, I don't get her.
Yeah, I don't either. And also, I am going to make note right now that if this episode, it's just a lot of kind of just going over everything, because like the scenes weren't, like the only scenes that were kind of in depth are the ones that we already like talked about, that we could have like serious like that I felt like we could have like an interesting discussion on. So it's kind of like, okay, yeah, we're recapping the show.
Yeah, a lot of this is recapping. There's a couple things that I have notes on that are like important symbolism, but most of this is just recapping. So Dr. Chassor apparently works for the Fish and Wildlife Department. Now, I have to say, I don't really like her character, but I did really like when she showed up and pulled her badge out, and the dumb cop, who apparently he doesn't have a name in the show, but in the books his name is Nose. Like, they not his name, but they call him Nose. They call the fat cop Neck and the skinny cop Nose in the books. Found that out. But so Nose goes, I didn't know Fish and Wildlife had badges. And she said, well, that's what the badge says. And I was like, okay, cool. I thought it was funny. I thought it was funny because my first thought when she pulled it out, I was like, oh, she's with the FBI. And then she says, Fish and Wildlife. And I was like, Fish and Wildlife has badges? And then he said it, and I was like, yes. So apparently she has come to help them, and she's doing all kinds of weird, like talking about different kinds of animals and what they do and ligature marks and all this like technical sciencey stuff that I didn't fully, I mean, I mostly understood it, but I also didn't care.
Yeah, I was just like, I don't care about what, what certain fish look like or what trail marks certain animals leave behind. Like, I get like she's trying to like prove the point that she's like, I know what I'm doing here when it comes to finding out what animal you're here.
Yeah,
but
that with the track stuff though is not yet. I'm just talking about one that she's in the car and she's like going through the files and she's like talking about.
Oh yeah.
And she's just like talking about everything in the files and about like ligature marks and bodies and blah blah blah. And I'm like, cool. So it's a big animal. We already kind of knew that. Great. Then we go to school, and these motherfucking, excuse my language, little high school freshman boys are kicking Shelly. No, these are the freshmen.
Wait, freshman boys, yeah.
Shelly is on the ground crying, and they're kicking her and asking her what these girls tasted like. And she is sobbing, and they're like, okay, we get it. This freshman class has to stick together. So just tell us, do they taste good? Grunt once for yes.
I've never wanted to kick children more in my entire life than right in that moment.
Right. But apparently,
also, sorry, dog's going off right now.
Is it Oscar?
Yeah.
Yeah. But we were not the only ones feeling that anger, because Roman shows up, freaks out, and uses his weird vampire mind control to make the boys kiss each other. Which, of course, then all the other people find that boys kissing each other just because Roman said to way funnier than this poor crying girl, and they go off and do their dumb high school things. So then Peter gets to school, and Peter and Roman go and are sitting on the stairs in like a weird hallway. And this was a very interesting scene, actually. So they're sitting on the stairs and they're talking about what happened to that girl. And Roman's like, are you sure you didn't do it? But the other thing is, this is supposedly the day after Peter turned.
Mm-hmm.
But from everything we have read so far, or not read, watched so far and looked at from the maggots and the information that all the other characters have said, this body is not fresh.
Yeah.
Peter clearly didn't do it. But Peter says that he knows who did, kind of. He says it was a Vargulf, which is basically like a wolf.
An evil werewolf.
Well, yeah, it is. It's an evil werewolf, but it's more like it's basically like a diseased wolf. Like sometimes when animals have like certain cancers or stuff or like mental problems, they will like do things that are super out of nature of that animal. And he said that a vargulf is a wolf that doesn't kill what it eats or eat what it kills. It kills things, but then it isn't eating the thing. So basically, not only is it like out of control, it's also not sustaining itself. Eventually, it's going to die because it's not eating. It's just killing.
Hold on 1 second.
Yep.
Shut the fuck
up. Of course, okay. Yeah, of course. As soon as we pause, he starts. So then Roman is like super determined, and he is going. He's like, he says, "I've always wanted to be a warrior," which is the background on my phone. He says, "I've always wanted to be a warrior," and he starts talking about the Order of the Dragon, which is the title of the episode. But the Order of the Dragon is a real life thing. It was this certain group in the Crusades that was made, or it was founded in 1408 by the King of Hungary to try to stop the Ottoman Empire from invading farther into Europe. And obviously, because it was part of the Crusades, it was Catholic, but it was one of the few orders in the armies in the Crusades that didn't care if you were Catholic. They just wanted more people to fight. So it was one of the places where a lot of non-Catholic like warriors helped to fight. But the thing that is super interesting about them choosing the Order of the Dragon in particular, out of all of the other random like groups of knights in the Crusades, there's two parts. One is that it is a group that was formed specifically in Austro-Hungary, like in Eastern Europe, which plays a lot into the Romani Gypsy like heritage culture thing that they're playing on. Like there's a lot of, and like the fact that it's an oupir, not a vampire, and like all this like Eastern European storytelling. The other thing that is super interesting about it is the symbol of the Order of the Dragon in the Crusades is a dragon that is eating its tail. It looks like an Ouroboros, except for the top half, instead of just being the snake body, is the body and the wings of a dragon. So that's
and then with the rest of this this scene where they're sitting in the hallway, like on the stairs, this is the one part of the scene that I feel like Peter is over exaggerating, because Roman, at this point we are aware that Roman and Peter are having very similar dreams, like they're both getting messages through something, and I know because of the fact that Peter knows what Roman is, whether Roman knows it or not, I think that scares Peter, which is fine. And I think, like, because me and Em have briefly talked about this before beforehand, but for the fact that it could be very, like, you know, him trying to get his, like, Peter trying to understand, like, if he could trust Roman and do things like that with Roman to see if it's just for Roman's gain or for the both of them.
Right. Because Roman says they have to find whoever this Vargulf is. And Peter kind of freaks out and is like, if you're feeling all these things, why don't you just go talk to your guidance counselor? I don't want anything to do with it. I know you're not used to hearing the word no, but that's the answer. And, like, storms off and leaves Roman alone.
Yeah. And then Roman goes like, well, what the fuck?
Yeah, so he gets upset. I mean, granted, I would too if, like, the only person I thought was my friend was just, like, screaming at me for no reason. Yeah. And part of it, like Mon, you were saying, Mon, I think that there's part of it is, like, a testing thing. But I also think, like, because of the transient nature of the Romani culture and the Gypsy people, like, just moving so much, like, and he's just used to not staying in the same place for long. I think that in his mind, now that things are getting worse with more killings, he has to leave. And he can't commit to being Roman's friend or helping Roman with anything because then he can't leave.
Yeah. Which, that's fair. And because, like, It was going to be based off of a trust thing. I was like, if he's never trust Roman, I said, in the second episode, he's like, hey, you want to see me become a full-ass werewolf?
Right.
Like, you want to see
I don't think that he is, I think it's more that, like, he's genuinely torn because he knows Roman's right, but he can't be Roman's friend and run away.
Yeah. And I hope, like, that doesn't end up happening. I don't feel like it's going to happen. Just because of the fact that I think Peter's probably going to understand that there's a greater battle to fight, and hopefully Peter will stop being afraid of the fact that, you know, Roman actually wants to help him.
If there's not, it's a waste of 3 episodes.
Oh, for sure.
So now we go to the woods, and Dr. Chasser is looking at the body, and she's very, very confused by the fact that there is no, like,
tracks.
No tracks. She finds the tracks from the dogs, who are like the police dogs, and she knows they're the police dogs because you can tell that they have cut nails, which a wild dog wouldn't have cut nails. But there's no tracks, and there's no marks of the body like being moved at all. She sees the Christina's footprints, and she's saying all this like stuff about exactly what pace Christina walked at. And then she's like, and the boot print of a Caucasian male about 200 pounds who had like problems with an injury on his left knee and neck. The fat cop goes, how do you know he's Caucasian? And she said, because it's Pennsylvania. And I was like, so like, she's funny and super smart, and I kind of like her, except that I don't trust her. Like, I think there's more. Yeah. There's way more to the story.
And here's my thing, is that I don't understand why the fact that they're not finding tracks, because we've seen Peter become a wolf.
And we've seen him leave tracks.
Yes. So
it's clearly not Peter that's doing this.
Exactly, because if there's not, and the thing is, if it is a wolf and it ends up being like another, like he said, a Vargulf, anything like Peter, they still should like logistically leave tracks. It's not a stealthy wolf; it's still a wolf, but just a teased wolf.
The one thing that was interesting is that she was talking about how it doesn't make sense for like them to have left half the body there uncovered, like as if they wanted it to be found. And the nose was like, well, my cat brings stuff home and just leaves it there for me to find it all the time. And she was like, she like had the realization that it was something that was like doing it on purpose, like some kind of animal that was feeling empathy or trying to show that it had a trophy, like it was doing it on purpose.
And then my other thing that I have a theory about when it comes to body placement, that there not being tracks and things like that. I believe that it could be something that is staged to where the killings could be taking place somewhere else. Like there could be a Vargulf around.
Well, they definitely said that the girl got killed somewhere else and moved there.
So the fact that maybe, just hear me out, Godfrey Industries might know a little bit about this Vargulf because they were experimenting on it. This is going to be a very heavy theory.
Listen, listen, do it. Save our theories for the end.
You're right.
Because I think you might be onto something, but let's keep going with the episode for now. Okay, next scene. Letha is at the OB Roman calls her and like to see what she's doing because he needs a friend because Peter just yelled at him and he's lonely. So he calls Letha because she's literally the only other friend he has. She's at the OB. So he gets real upset and goes into a bar and just pulls out a fake ID and orders some whiskey. And like, here's the thing.
That could never work for him. He's literally famous in his own town.
That's the thing. Everybody at the bar knows who he is. Your fake ID doesn't mean anything if every person at the bar knows you're 17. But the dude gives him whiskey anyway, so that guy should get his alcohol license revoked.
Yep.
But not really the point. Fun fact about that scene, because this show was not filmed in Pennsylvania. It was filmed outside of Toronto, and there is a sign in the bar that has the symbols for the Liquor Board of Ontario in it that they forgot to cover. Fun fact.
See, I didn't notice that.
I didn't either. I read it on IMDb. Then we flash to the next random ass character introduction in the middle of the season. And there is this couple. They're laying in bed. And the beginning of the scene was actually very interesting because at the bar, the bartender gives Roman the whiskey and then makes a phone call. And then the next scene is the outside of a building with police sirens. And I was like, oh, damn, they called the cops on Roman. Only they didn't. It was to trick us. And then it went into this other building where there was Destiny's fortune telling. It was this girl, Destiny, she walks into the room with the couple on the bed and starts lighting incense and candles, and there's all these statues, and I really, really appreciated all the art because there were a lot of Buddha statues, but it wasn't just any Buddha, it was the Thai version of Buddha, and I was like, but then she starts saying all this stuff about the goddess and reincarnation and calls herself Destiny the Sacred Whore.
Yeah. What a flex.
Right. I was like, where is this going? Like, what is... And then she was like, asked the girl if she was on or near her moon. And I was like, oh, cool, she's a werewolf or a vampire. Because she's worried about the vampire because of the moon means period and that's blood. But because she called it her moon, I was thinking werewolf. So I was like, oh, cool. She's one of our weird things. So then all of a sudden you hear like vomiting and the couple runs out of the room and throws money at her and is like, I'm so sorry, and freaks out and runs away. And it flashes to Peter just standing there. And then she's like, oh, hey, honey, let me just get cleaned up. I was like...
And then she like crawls backwards into the doorway and closes the door as she's picking up the money floor.
I was like, what is happening? So it turns out that is Peter's cousin. So she's also Romani.
And she is a 6'4".
I don't really personally care for the trope of a gypsy being a con artist and stealing people's money. I think that is a little inappropriate and tactless. like when people steal your money and you say, oh man, I was gypped, it's literally like a racial slur, like talking about gypsy people, like super, super not cute to be making that her defining character trait as soon as she starts. So I was already perturbed. I was like, first of all, middle of the third episode, and we're getting a weird ass, like, out of left field character introduction that we can't tell immediately how it's connected to the story.
Yeah.
Then, on top of that, it is racially insensitive. Then, on top of that, I just didn't like her character.
I kind of like Destiny.
So,
like, it's a bit rough. It's gonna end up softening up, and like she's gonna have more of a loving quality about her that we just don't see yet.
I hope so, but so
we didn't get enough about her to make a judgment on what her character is. Like, I could see where you're coming from with her probably being queen, but
because she comes and she is talking. Peter's telling her everything that's going on and talking about the Vargolf and everything, and he's like, "What can we do to stop it?" And she's like, "Put a bullet between its eyes." Like, she doesn't have any compassion. In this whole first scene that she's introduced, she doesn't show any sign of like empathy for anyone, because her response to the Vargolf is to just kill it. Done. There's no way to save it. Kill it. Then she finds out that Peter is friends with Roman, and she starts screaming at him about being friends with a new peer and how you can't trust them, and like once again just shows any lack of like empathy. And Peter gets upset and he's like, we have the same dreams. And she just gets like really soft for a second and is like, oh. And I really thought she was about to accuse him of being in love with Roman. Like, it really felt so awkward. And I was like, oh my God, he's gay. But then she says the exact same thing that his mom said in the last episode. You've never had a real friend before. Like, in the exact same tone that his mom said it. And I was like, wow, this kid really has no friends.
Yeah. Besides, like, his mom and apparently his cousin now.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's literally me. I'm Peter.
Destiny, and I don't like her.
What, do you want me to be the secret whore?
Listen, I can't make your choices for you. But so basically, the end of their conversation is that she doesn't really care that Peter has his first friend. She tells him to run. Get out of there. Then next, Olivia, we flip back to the bar and Roman is drinking and this dude starts threatening him and it gets real uncomfortable and he's about to punch him, and then the door opens and it is Olivia, who we find out is who the bartender actually called, not the cops, and she's rescuing her very drunk and upset son, and then starts talking to him about the Emperor Moth. And it was very weird. So far, I haven't understood anything that woman has said.
Me neither. She's like a loose cannon.
Yeah.
You don't know what she's ever gonna say, but it's gonna probably end up meaning something, but you're gonna be lost until it does.
Yeah, no, I'm for sure. I mean, and then they had a flashback of her telling him the same story as a small child. And like, the story is a good story. It's about how the Emperor Moth becomes such a strong moth because of how hard it has to fight to get out of its cocoon, and if somebody breaks the cocoon too early, the moth will never be able to fly. And it was basically like, I know stuff is hard, but I can't fix everything for you because otherwise you'll never grow. But instead of just saying that, like, you know, a comforting mom, like a comforting mom normally would to your child, she does it in like weird myths and allegories, and I'm like, okay, cool.
See, last week we had Boo as an issue. This week we got Oscar. You know, it's just the luck of the draw when when it comes to recording in my household.
It happens. Okay, so after the strange Emperor Moth scene, it goes to Christina's house, and Dr. Chasser is coming to ask her some questions, and Christina continues to be a nosy little biatch and ask questions that are not appropriate, and is looking at Dr. Chasser's necklace and was like, "Oh, you believe in evolution?" Like, but or no, or do you believe in evolution? And then something about religion and science and how they don't really go together, and how can you be a scientist if you believe in God, which I think is really kind of rude. And she says that like faith and science seem irreconcilable, and it feels that way a lot of time, but they're really not, which again put another tally in the I really think there's more to this chick than we know about column. And she asks her, she was like, "Oh good, you're like super observant and nosy, so you would have seen something at the crime scene. What did you see?" And then we get a flashback to the crime scene, except for the corpse turns its head and smiles at the camera, and it was the creepiest thing I've ever seen.
I love shit like that, man. Oh, I love it.
It just was, it didn't look real.
Yeah.
Like, it looked super CG, and that's what freaked me out about it. Like, if it had been, like, the same, like, just dead chick turned her head and smiled, it would have been fine, but it felt super, like, poor CG ghost movie, and it freaked me out.
Yeah.
So then they were like, "Did you see any tracks or anything?" And she goes, "Oh, no, he wouldn't do that."
And then Chesor goes, "Who's he?"
Who's he?
And then we find out who he is.
Because the next scene is Peter and his mom packing up their stuff, getting out of the trailer. They're getting out of Dodge. They're done. They're leaving. They're running like Destiny told them to. Except then, as they're trying to pack up the car, Tom and Clementine, I hate that her name is Clementine. That is the worst name for like a character that is supposed to be like a badass.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Clementine. Wow.
It's clearly why she only goes by Dr. Chasser, because
being called Clementine is the worst. Yeah.
They show up and they start asking. Literally, my note says, "Weirdest interview ever, bro." She's asking all these questions. She's like, "Are you?" But she literally just goes, "Are you a werewolf?" And he's like, "No." And she's like, "Why does Christina think you're a werewolf?" And he's like, "Because I told her." And she was like, "Why would you tell her if you're not a werewolf?" He goes, "Because she thought I was." And she was like, what made her think that? And he goes, "My fingers are the same length." And she goes, "Is that a normal werewolf attribute?" He goes, "She thinks so." Like, I don't know. And it's just like super, and he's like way, way, way too polite. Like, he answers every question with "ma'am, ma'am, ma'am," until she gets to the point where she says, "Are you a werewolf?" And he goes, "No, sir." I mean, man, it was like so awkward.
So, and the only thing I feel touching about that, not touching, but like to touch upon about that scene, is that as much as I think Chesor didn't want to believe that there were werewolves, I feel like she knows something that we don't think she knows about.
I think she fully thinks he's a werewolf. Like, I think she fully believes that that is true, and that whether she believes he is a werewolf or not, she definitely thinks there are such things as werewolves.
Yes. And that is one of those things where it's like, Okay.
Yeah.
So after she has like she keeps it lighthearted, like haha, like okay, yeah, we kind of figured you weren't a werewolf, but like like we had to ask. And they're
Yeah.
like, okay, packing or are you staying? And then it was like they're like kind of like, fuck, like we gotta stay now.
Yeah, like he's like, well, like I can't, you can't just like scoot out of town after that, or the whole like federal government's gonna come looking for you because you're a werewolf.
Yeah. So
Um,
that
yeah, but also my favorite thing about that scene was actually just how like awkward Tom looked the whole time because he was like, dude, there's no such thing as werewolves. This is so weird. This kid is annoying. He's
like, why do I feel like the only person that doesn't
oh,
believe people
but it
things
was
is just
also
Tom?
she suddenly got like really aggressive with him at one point, and she's like, what were you and Roman Godfrey doing in the park like that night after Brooke Bluebell was killed? And literally he goes, we were catching fireflies. I was like, nobody's gonna believe you. Like at least say you were like smoking a joint or something, so it's like not good, but a believable reason why two 17-year-old boys would be alone in the park. Like, we were catching fireflies. Do you want everybody to think you're gay lovers?
Like I'm almost positive like he had to have been saying it with like sarcasm. He's like, we were catching fireflies, ma'am. And like
Right. I was like, bro.
uh and that's I love Peter. I will say real quick, they did a really good job making you like very two different people in the show. I do have to do a really good job developing their characters because like I'm pretty sure I've said this in every single video, but I have been a vampire girl for me to like a werewolf boy, it takes a lot.
Yeah, no. Well, and you know me, I'm never team werewolf ever in anything. And like episode 1, I was like, no, Peter's my favorite character.
See, Peter and Roman are I love both. I legit can't pick. Like I'll watch like the one episode. I think it was the first episode. Of course, I saw like Roman Godfrey. I like that. And then this episode, I'm like, okay, but Peter's kind of fucking like he's a shit, man.
I like how she called him. She called him something that I don't remember what the word was, and I was about to pause it and like Google the word, and then he asked her what the word meant, and I was like, oh good, I'm not supposed to know what it means. And then she was like, oh, it just means furry. And I was like, that is so uncomfortable to tell a 17-year-old boy that he's furry.
You're very furry.
Right. Although he is that is like quite the happy trail he's got there.
He has quite the body hair.
Yeah, which I wonder how much the actor Landon. I wonder how hairy Landon is versus how much of that was like glued on hair to make him like look hairier. Because like that's like a real hairy belly button.
Yes, it is.
So then we flash to the scene that absolutely melted my heart into a puddle. It was just Roman washing his sister's feet and taking care of her and loving her. And I
know.
I don't even have words. I literally just felt my heart. Oh.
I can't get over the scene because it shows that Roman, like whether one, like Roman has such like a gruff exterior, but he's so caring with Shelly. Like I think the only person probably legit has love for in his heart is.
And it's the only relationship that doesn't feel like there's something off. Like
Yeah.
Whenever he has scenes with Letha, it's clearly like there is something that is not cousinly about this relationship. When his relationship with Peter is still very like tenuous and may or may not be because of selfish stuff. His relationship with his mom is just horrible. But with Shelly, it's like so pure.
Yeah. It's like, that's like I think they did a really good job contrasting, because I think when it comes like with Letha, I feel like there is something that isn't cousinly there that we don't know about, and I don't even know if Roman knows about.
Oh,
And then same thing.
I think he
And
does.
and the same thing with Olivia. I feel like Olivia's like being a ploy in some.
I still think she's a succubus. Like, I still believe that.
I could see it, but then think about it, like, but then how would they have all known that she's an oupier? Like,
but we don't know what she is yet. There's no proof that she is an oupier.
That is also true. We just know that his family
is. And it's like, if there's things that I guess could be genetic traits that are not necessarily like Linda is clearly not a werewolf.
Yeah.
But Peter is, and he doesn't have a relationship with his dad. So like, maybe his dad was, like, we don't know. So like, there could be, there's obviously genetic components to it, but it is possible that she's something, but not necessarily that.
Yeah.
So then, after the beautiful montage of Roman being a wonderful human, sorry, there was a weird noise on my balcony.
Is it the geckos fighting again?
No, it sounds like water, but there's no water, so I'm confused. Then Peter shows up at the Godfrey house and has the absolute strangest interaction with Olivia. And she tries to convince him that Roman's not home.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's asking all these questions about their English class. And she's like, oh, you're reading Wuthering Heights. And she's like, tell me. And she's like asking, like, and what she asks is actually a very like genuine question in like the literature community. Like, where does Heathcliff from Wuthering Heights fall on like the scale of whether he's a Byronic hero or he's like not a good guy? Like what is she asks like the stereotypical at the end of the book project essay question is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
She asks it in a very pointed way because she deliberately refers to the fact that Heathcliff is a gypsy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like, I'm asking you a question that a mom who has a kid in the same English class who also is really smart and loves literature would ask, but also kind of doing it in a way to show you that I don't really like you.
Yes.
And then he goes, I'm only on chapter 1. And she gives him the weirdest one-over look and was like, oh, yes, you are. And that made me so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I was like,
your face.
Then she goes to turn around and be like, oh, well, Roman's not here, so I'll let him know. And as she turns around, Roman is standing there, like, staring at her, being like, bitch. So she rolls her eyes and is like, ugh, you have a collar. I was like, which nobody uses that term anymore.
But we also are dealing with Olivia, who thinks that she's like, you know, the queen of, you know, England, and it's just like.
And that emperor moths are a great analogy for your child.
Yeah.
So Peter comes into the house. He's talking to Roman about his situation. And he's telling him how he feels. And Roman, like the little bitch that he is, goes, why don't you just talk to your guidance counselor?
I love the back and forth that they have, because the back and forth that they have is like something that happens in real life friendships, not like in those weird like TV show, like, oh, you're my best friend. We never say anything bad about each other. I'm like, no, if you can't like make fun of your best friend or a friend in general, like, are you guys even friends at that point? Because
right, like today I saw a meme that was like, the first person on your atlas is going to get pregnant in December. And I screenshotted it and sent it to Raylan and was like, you're the first person on my atlas. And she was like, you're a bitch. And I was like, so they're talking, and we learned that Nikolai, who is Peter's grandfather, killed another gypsy, which is why he doesn't really have a community, and it's just him and his mom. And he tells that tattoo on his side, the G, stands for Garjo, which means outsider. So he's like, I don't have anybody anywhere. And I can't. He's like, but I'm afraid that this doctor chick is going to find out that Nikolai killed somebody, and that's going to make me look even more suspicious because she's a digger, and that's what she does. She finds things out. And so Peter is like, Roman's like, so what do we do? And Peter's like, we find the Vargulf. And he's like, then what? And Peter says, well, if we have time before the next full moon, we help him. And if not, I kill him. And Roman's super freaked out. He's like, you would really do that? He's like, well, like, I'll do what I have to. Mm-hmm. So then we have one last scene, and Letha is asleep on her couch, and her dad walks in and is just looking at her and accidentally wakes her up. And she's like, oh, like, are you okay? And he's like, no, I'm not. And she's like, come sit with me. And she's sitting on the couch with her. And he starts crying. And we get a flashback to a scene with Mr. Pullman, whose first name is Francis. We learned that in this scene. And he's like, Francis, what are you talking about? And he's like, I saw the thing that's inside her. And Norman says, inside who? And he says, inside your daughter. And then we get like a quick flash of Letha, and then of the angel, and then of Norman crying again. And apparently this angel baby is not
there's something up
pleasant.
Yeah.
And that is where the episode ends. And
with so much evidence pointing this way, because of the fact that in the last episode, when Mr. Pullman, when we first discover him running through the woods, and just the way he looks at the Godfrey building, it looks like he might have seen something in there that he probably should not have seen. Or he was experimenting. For sure. I mean, Tom even says something to Norman about his friends in the White Tower, which I think is where Dr. Price works. He was not mentioned this episode, but don't think I forgot about him. No, he's still there. He's still kicking. He's still making everyone's life a living hell.
But I don't really get the whole... Oh, there was also a scene at some point. Oh, it was in the same scene when Francis was freaking out. It showed him watching the Vargulf attack Brooke. So he saw it. But I don't really get his whole thing, because in the scene in the last episode where Roman and Letha were like helping him on the road, he wasn't freaked out by Letha, but he was freaked out by Roman. But if Letha has something evil growing inside of her, you would think that would have freaked him out.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling like there are already starting to be plot holes. Yeah. And I don't like plot holes.
Me neither.
And
my one thing that I want to say is that I feel like we aren't going to know anything about this baby until I'm ballparking somewhere around middle to end of season 2. Just because I feel like there's already too much going on in the season with the Bargle that the baby's going to get kind of pushed aside.
I don't disagree that there's too much going on, but we are already in the first 3 episodes, we have traveled in time a month and maybe 2 months.
That's fair.
And when we find out that Letha's pregnant, she says that it happened earlier that summer. So at this point, she's between 4 to 5 months pregnant. And if we're moving a month per episode, there's 0 chance that they can push the baby off till season 2 and still have any believability.
No, I think that the baby's going to be born in this season.
Oh, okay. You just don't
we're going to know anything about it until
I think we're dealing with a Shelley-esque situation where as soon as it's going to be born, it's going to be very obvious that something's wrong.
Oh, yes, absolutely, but we're not going to know
we're not going to deal with it.
Yeah. And that's the thing is because we still know that Shelley's not normal. We still don't know what caused her to not.
True.
So it's I feel like they like having that mystery. I just hope they don't, overextend it into where it's annoying, where we're like, why are we asking so many questions and you start answering them, please.
Right. Yeah. I will say I haven't looked into the next episode yet, but I do know episode 4 is the first one that the author of the book didn't write. So we'll see.
We're going to hope and pray and cross all of our fingers and toes and hope that's, and I hope at least the other director that they have on there that is working with them is, at least doing his work justice and not,
right.
Just throwing.
Yeah. Who are we throat punching this episode?
Christina.
Hands down, Christina. We did talk about this before. Neither of us shared our person, but we were both talking about how I don't know if you are going to know who I picked because it's not exactly the most obvious person, but hands down, Christina needs to get punched.
Yeah, she's over here telling literal FBI people oh yeah, Pyramid, yeah, he's a werewolf. Just so you know.
Listen, can you imagine if a police officer came to your house and asked you if you knew anything about somebody getting murdered and you were like, yeah, that dude's a werewolf? They
would put her ass in a mental hospital and be like, you'll be reading too many books over here. Twilight.
First of all, they would run a tox screen and see what kind of drugs she's on. And secondly, they would not then go and question said werewolf.
And also the fact, the thing that made me so irritated with Christina, because it's just she's so oblivious, but yet that's why I think that she knew that body was real because of the fact that she's so observant about everything. How long? She just walked past it and go, this is a fake body. I'm gonna kiss it. I think she had to know something was up and had to play dumb just in case someone was watching.
Yeah.
That's legit all I have to think.
First of all, who just casually continues to stroll towards the body? Either you run away terrified, or you very carefully and cautiously walk up to something nervously, trying to figure out what it is. You don't, as the doctor said, walk at a relaxed pace.
Yeah. And on top of that, when she first saw the body, her thermos or whatever fell out of her hand, so clearly she was shocked by it.
Yeah.
And then why would the first knowing damn and how her I don't know if it is anything more than that, that she knows what it is, or if it's just really shitty writing for her character in that scene. Because
I don't know.
Her finding that body does not go under any of the characteristics that we have learned about her at all. She's super...
Even in that scene, because she stops and spends like a solid few minutes staring at a snake hole in the ground and having flashbacks to some other kind of hole that she was looking at, and then can't tell that the corpse is real?
Yeah. And that's like the one thing that irritates me, because she literally has such observant like qualities, like that's like the writers just like took all of like her characteristics away just to like either build something, or it is for a different purpose.
Yeah.
So she's on my radar. There's something about her that I think she's kind of sketch. I don't know what about her, whether she...
I thought she was sketch from the beginning, but today she officially reached my ready to punch list.
Yeah, she said a little too much, and like her character, like she's kind of annoying, she's kind of insensitive, and she like you feel bad, but
who did I want to punch last week?
It wasn't Christina. I can't remember.
I'm just trying to I'm going to make a tally and see like who I want to punch every week, and I can't remember. I know Olivia was my first punch.
Yeah.
I'll have to watch the episode back and see who I wanted to punch.
Yeah.
Episode, not the show episode. But
yeah.
Okay.
I'm glad we're both paid with Christina.
Now, usually our second segment is trivia, but since the show continues to prove absolutely useless in the trivia department, we decided we're scrapping that for the time being, and we're going to have our second segment instead be who is the saving grace, the winner of the episode, who like made it watchable.
For me, just because of the one scene, like Roman, I love, like he took my heart, especially with the scene with Shelley, how he's been interacting with Peter, and almost like you just see like the desperateness in wanting just having that connection with Peter, that it's there, and him just not getting it. And I just think like Roman's character in this episode, it showed like a completely different side than I think.
I agree. I like his like destitution at Peter not wanting to be his friend. Like, I don't think he handled things well, but I definitely felt for him. He was probably the only character that had an entirely good episode, like that didn't do anything to upset me.
And the thing that not irritates me, the thing with us seeing, and at least the audience knowing, that Roman isn't after Peter for a selfish reason, because if you're after someone for a reason, you don't act the way that you do when it comes to that, because he has empathy for Peter and in that way. And when you're selfish, it's like, okay, fine, I'll do it on my own, or fine, whatever, I don't need you, because you have like that weird cocky confidence that you need.
Yeah.
And you see that it like is legit affecting him, and it's something that bothers him. But then as soon as Peter comes back, he's like, okay, like I'm gonna be snarky with you, but like, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, I agree.
And about that's what I love with Roman's character in this episode. I think he did a really good job. His scenes are very enjoyable to watch for more than one reason.
I think the only other person that I would even put into consideration would be Nose and Neck, because they made me laugh the most in this episode.
Yes.
So now this grand theory of yours, lay it on me.
So I think, because like I said, with the tracks at the same, I think there is something or someone that knows that the Vargulf is a thing. I think the Vargulf does have part in this to do the killing aspect.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think the Vargulf is responsible for who get killed. I think someone else makes that option for them. And I have a feeling that people in the White Tower know of our Vargulf, and are just letting it kind of do its thing with it, and for in return, for in the name of science, for their studying, that they are they're doing this to almost keep it off their back so that they're not going to be in the foreground of it. But I think someone is like helping the Vargolf in a way, because with how the body is separated and only one half is brought somewhere, and we don't know where the other half of this body is yet. Like, that never gets found out in the episode.
Right.
So still not knowing some of that, I feel like there's a lot more than just a Vargolf to be worrying about when it comes. And that's something I think that obviously the characters in the show don't know, at least right now. Another thing I am happy about is how quickly Peter and Roman did become friends, because when me and you called it, we're like, oh yeah, it's gonna happen, but probably not till later, because they're gonna probably hate each other.
But I'm glad, because it is making the story run better, because if there was I think it happened a little too fast. But I do think that if it had gone on as long as I thought it was going to, it would
be too much.
It wouldn't necessarily be a bad story. It would just be a very different story than the one they're trying to tell.
Yes, and the fact that like, I was definitely kind of shocked. Like, end of second episode, we're just like, hey, it looked like I hated you in the last one, but you want to know what? That's wolf out, bro. Like, let's just fucking go for it.
Right.
And like, it was just like, that was really fast. Like, I could have seen it happening like the third, like this episode, or maybe the fourth episode, like beginning of the fourth episode. I could have seen it happening, but things are happening so quickly. And when you find out that there was like a month difference between episode 1 and like episode 2, like, okay, like they've had time to put their differences aside to like kind of look at things differently. But it just sucks that we didn't see it, but it's all right, because like I feel like that would have been kind of like pointless for us to see, because we're still seeing their relationship like become something, and it's still like not 100% solid, but that's showing that they can tolerate one another at least.
Yeah. I have one theory and one question. My question / pondering / hope is that I hope that those stupid birds all dying into the river actually mean something, and was not just a scene of someone yelling at birds.
Stupid birds.
And so that is my question, is like, why are the birds stupid and dead? Like, why?
And the way that they fall into the water.
It was like very obviously, if you didn't know it was a dream before the birds all died, it was obvious.
At that point, yeah.
Yeah. And then my theory is that whatever is inside Roman is very evil.
Do you mean
like the other half of him, like the Upir part that he doesn't know what it is, or he doesn't know what he is. I have a feeling that the reason he's trying so hard to understand is because whatever this other part to him is very, very bad. And he feels that and doesn't want that.
And at least he shows that he has like some form of humanity to him, where he's like, he knows what he wants to be, and he doesn't want to let something bad take over him. So he's doing legitimately everything in his power. And I think whenever the transformation does happen, it's going to be very, very not good. Yeah.
That is
that's going to hurt.
Yeah. That is my theory. Because of how scared Peter was in the dream, and because of how unnaturally earnest Roman is, like how he's just so worried about being good and finding the bad guy and stopping things and making sure Peter doesn't look like he's the bad guy, even though he could have done it. Like, he's just trying so hard to be the good guy that I'm very afraid he's not.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, that was episode 4 of
No, it was episode 3.
3. I'm sorry, that was episode 3 of him. I've been up since 8 a.m.
It's only 11. Oh no, it's noon. Yeah, but it's 11 p.m. and I got up at 6:30 this morning, and you're yawning more than I am.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, if you have any theories you want to add to ours, any questions, you want to tell us to just stop talking, you can send us an email at deathandaliens@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at MK_superstar, spelled EMKAY.
Superstar.
Well, yeah, I didn't need to spell superstar.
And you can follow me on my Instagram at monica.lynn_, and my Twitter is Moni_Lynn, _, because someone wanted to jack my 1_ because identity theft. And Moni spelled MONIE. Don't get it twisted and put 2 N's, because if you spell it that way, you are wrong. Okay, yeah, so
I'm just still laughing at the fact that you said somebody's trying to jack my identity, like Monica Lynn is the most unique name ever used.
it is. I'm unique.
You most definitely are. All right, that is it for us. We will talk to you next week.
Bye.